we hear so much like bullshit or it's just so much anti-China propaganda that I thought you'd like to hear a little bit about the Belt and Road Initiative coming from a positive standpoint, a positive view of what the Belt and Road Initiative is. And this article by Orinoco Tribune, covered in Popular Resistance, Belt and Road Initiative introduces key tenets of Chinese philosophy to the world. So when the Belt and Road Initiative was first proposed 10 years ago, along with much anticipation, there was considerable puzzlement as to what it was. And quite reasonably so, because it's like nothing we had seen before. There was no plan for fixed dates. There was nothing concrete. There were no boundaries. There was no end date. In every sense, it was open-ended. It was an idea, a concept, and it was totally new and original way of thinking about a project. Furthermore, it was on the hugest of scales, encompassing the great majority of the world's population. At the heart of China's transformation was state-led, large-scale investment in infrastructure. And I know some of you just hear state-led and you want to barf in your barf bag there. But then, thank you, by the way, for bringing a barf bag to my show. I know it's required at times, especially earlier when I told you to picture Donald Trump's body. But for those of you I know who are state-led and you just go, oh, God, keep in mind some of these projects, or really all these projects that we're talking about at the moment, there's no way to accomplish them without millions of people working together. So at the moment, our world is divided. If you're talking about organizations that can, gather that much workforce of millions of people, it is pretty much only states. So yes, I'm not saying that's the only way to set up the world. I'm actually opposed to the idea that nation states are how our world should be divided. However, in our current operating capacity, nation states are the only way you're going to have massive global projects. So they continue that China it was a China state-led large-scale investment in infrastructure. They figured if it worked for China, then why not for others? And it did work for China. For those of you who don't know, China eradicated extreme poverty within China's borders. 850 million people, over the size of 2 United States worth of people, were taken out of extreme poverty by China. They did that over the past 30 years. And those numbers are not denied even by the UN or the EU. To continue from the article, most of the Eurasian landmass, together with Africa and Latin America, suffered from a disabling shortage of infrastructure. The Belt and Road Initiative would seek to change that. China would be the hub of the project. It would consist of a multitude of bilateral agreements between China and the developing countries, with China providing the funding, typically in the form of loans. The response has been enormous, with 151 countries now participating in the Belt and Road Initiative. 151 countries out of roughly 200. Working with China to build up their infrastructure. And you could argue with this, but of the interviews and discussions I've heard, these countries are thankful for this. This is different than the IMF, World Bank, US-led pursuit of, yes, maybe building infrastructure, but putting it under such an aggressive loan situation that the country is then indebted and not just indebted, but under the thumb of the U.S. at every turn, to the point that often 70% of the country's GDP every year goes to paying interest on their loans. So from everything that I've read and seen, the deals that China is making to help these people build up their infrastructure is very different, far less predatory. And as I believe his name is Robert Membe, the socialist leader of, is it Niger or, I can't remember which country. Anyway, African country. Someone in chat can tell people which country he's from. But as he said, when we are offered a deal to build up our infrastructure and you come, generally white nations, generally Western white nations, come and tell us, oh, no, you can't take that deal. You're being exploited. and we say, no, we've looked at the deal. It's a choice we're making, and we want to build up our infrastructure. And it comes off as continued colonialism, as a continued idea that the West can tell these countries what is good and bad for them. And they're saying, no, we have sovereignty. We decide for ourselves. And I think that's a fair point to make. To continue from the article, little did we know at the time, but the launch of the Belt and Road Initiative was to signal a huge shift in China's relationship with the world. It marked the moment of China's coming out, and it was to prove remarkably successful. It is not an exaggeration to argue that over the decade of its existence, the Belt and Road Initiative has changed the world. The West has already paid little more than lip service to the developing world, which it looked down upon and treated in an exploitative, paternalistic, and authoritarian manner. The Belt and Road Initiative offered a new kind of solution for developing countries. And in the process, the developing world came to occupy an increasingly important position globally. Second, the Belt and Road Initiative forged a new kind of relationship between China and the developing world. China came to be seen as a champion of developing countries. It became a powerful voice on behalf of developing countries, not just by word, but crucially by action and deed. The relationship between China and the developing world is not based on the shared view of politics or ideology, nor military alliances, nor military threats, but on the most important issue facing the great majority of the world's population, that of development. This is entirely different from the West's approach. Now, there is, I like to talk about the multiple layers of reality. There is a deeper layer to this reality to discuss, such as whether endless development on this world is even possible without ecologically destroying this planet. But it is very tough to tell a poor nation or a poor people, hey, no, you're not allowed to have functioning roads and bridges and clean water because we can't develop anymore. So that discussion, that debate needs to be had. But I thought it was important to bring you an analysis of the Belt and Road Initiative, what it is, and why it's so different than the way the U.S. functions around the world. We put 800 military bases around the world. It used to be 1,000, but we're mostly not in Afghanistan anymore. But 800 military bases around the world. And we basically said to countries, abide by anything we want, or we will either invade you militarily or extract your resources, or we will destroy you via economic war, as we're currently trying to do to 30-some countries. So those were our options. Whereas China came and said, sign deals with us. We'll give you loans at reasonable rates, and you will be able to build up your country, and we will work together on this. And it was a very different way of going about it. And if you ask the countries involved in it, they seem to be thankful. Most of them that I've seen do not seem to be saying, oh my God, China has wrapped its tentacles around us. That's only the U.S. propaganda that seems to phrase it that way.